Hey everybody, Ted Forbes here. Welcome back to another day of the vlog. Today, well, we've got some interesting news to report and something that I thought I'd share with you guys. And I've debated this back and forth, and this is actually a decision that's come a long time in the making. Don't worry, it doesn't affect this or the show or anything. But a couple weeks ago, if you follow me on Twitter, I put a rather obscure tweet just because I wanted to see what people would have to say. And the tweet that I put out was, if I had to pick between integrity and a little bit of money, which should I choose? And I will go ahead and say that today I handed in my resignation and I quit my teaching job. And I wanted to explain that a little bit because I think it's really important in the greater context of some things, and I'll explain why. But basically, for the last 10 years, I have worked part-time as an adjunct faculty at a local college in Dallas. And it has been a pretty interesting 10 years. I've enjoyed it a lot. I love teaching. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys know I've got many videos where I try to inspire and make people think differently. And I really love teaching, and that's the integrity part. There's something about teaching for me. I might come back around to this, but it helps me as a photographer, as an artist, as somebody who's creative. I feel like it kind of, in a lot of ways, helps me become a more well-rounded human being when I show somebody how to do something, or I help somebody with a problem, or I genuinely love teaching. I'd like to think that I'm pretty good at it, but for the sake of trying not to be arrogant, I'll leave it at that. If you're a former student of mine, you can attest. But anyway, I've had a position as an adjunct faculty, and what adjunct means, adjunct professors typically are part-time. Well, they're always part-time. Adjunct professors typically, I think the most classes I've ever taught was 3, and usually it's between 1 and 2. Okay, so it's very part-time. You're not a full-time status teacher. Adjunct faculty are usually professionals. They're usually people that work in the field, that like to teach a little bit on the side as supplemental income a little bit, even though, I mean, income is not why anybody goes to teach. And that's part of my rant that I'm about to go on. And anyway, I've done this for 10 years, and I've always been very proud of it. When you tell somebody you teach college, you know, it's impressive sounding, I guess. That's not why I do it. I do it because I love teaching. Believe me, nobody goes into teaching for the money. It's, and that brings me to the point I want to make today. And the reason I kind of debated this a little bit, whether or not I'd actually talk about it or not, is I don't want to be discouraging to anybody who's in school. And I know that I have some photography students that are in college that watch the show, and even from some photography students that are in high school that are aspiring and looking at certain things. The college system in the United States, at least, is a very weird thing right now, I think. And I'm not the first one. I've had a lot of conversations with people about this lately, fellow teachers, people who are in education in general. And, you know, especially with higher education, you know, you have these institutional schools that will train you to do certain things, supposedly. And I have obviously a degree. To be hired as a teacher, you have to have at least a bachelor's, and I have a bachelor's degree that I earned from the University of North Texas, being my alma mater. I went to a state school, and I have done postgraduate work, but I don't have any postgraduate degrees. The degree that I have has very little to do with what I do now, and I even remember when I was younger at the time, you know, you're basically picking a career path coming out of high school that you want to stick. And usually people are around the age of 18 when they're trying to make a lifelong decision like this. It can work in some places, but the statistics show, and believe me, I've looked at the numbers till I'm blue in the face, the statistics show that the average person changes careers, and these are old statistics, so this is probably from around, oh gosh, it's a while back, probably 2005 or something like that, but the statistics say that the average person, at the time I looked this up, changes careers 5 times. Not jobs, careers. That means you're not just working for somebody else, you're in a different line of employment. So with this system that we have in place, how does a university or a college program prepare you for a career or 5 careers if they're going to be different? That's one problem that we have. At college, I don't regret getting my degree, even though it was in music, actually. It's closely related. It's an art degree. There's a lot of similarities I've talked about even on the show before between music and art and visual art and photography. Composition is composition, whether it be you know, audio in nature or whether it be visual in nature. And so I certainly don't regret the stuff I've learned. I would do it again. And I think anybody who is watching this who has a degree certainly understands that having been through college, what that does, and I remember at the time not understanding this because there was a point when I was a lot younger where I wanted to quit school. And I remember my father and there were some other people who were very encouraging to me, said, what a degree does is it shows that you can complete something. It shows that you can take on a major life project and complete it. And that's why. I mean, that's why a lot of employers require degrees. They'll ask for it. It says that you can complete something. And it says that you have a certain knowledge that you've gotten out of whatever that particular degree plan was or is. So anyway, with that being said, the problem that we have now, and it's really easy to blame a lot on the economy, and I'm not really into doing that, although I will admit the economy is awfully strange these days. You have to look at the cost of going to college. Now, when I went to college in the 90s, it was a lot cheaper than it is today. And I remember my tax attorney, actually, who helps me do my taxes every year, he has a son that goes to my alma mater, and we were talking about it. I said, well, it's a cheap school to go to. And he said, well, I don't know about that. And I mean, the tuition had more than doubled since I was there. And I did some looking online today because minimal preparation for this. The average college, and it was divided between private colleges and public colleges, the average college tuition for an undergraduate is around, and this is an average, and this is a couple years old, mind you, because they're slow to put together the numbers, but I think it was the 2005 statistics indicated that the average college tuition for 1 year of undergraduate school is around $29,000. That's the average. The average public tuition was around $12,000. I don't know about you, but to me that is a lot of money, and I do not have children, but if I did and they were anywhere near college, I'd be freaking out about how this was going to get paid for. Now, there are ways around this, obviously, and there are methods out there that everyone should take advantage of. There are scholarships available. You got to look for those things, and they are there, and you need to take them. And I'm not bagging on college. I'm not saying it's insignificant. But I am saying that if you go pay that in cash, and let's say you're paying the average at a university, which is 29 grand a year, I can buy a car for that. I mean, I'm not buying a car, I'm buying an education, and I'm not trying to belittle education. Education's probably more valuable than a car, fair enough. But after 4 years at, let's round it up and say 30 grand a year, that's $120,000 you're in debt. Now, if you go to a really expensive school, that's even more. So that's the debt you're going to carry coming out of school. What are you going to make it a job? So if you carry a debt of $120,000 and you take a job that's going to pay you $35,000, $40,000 a year, and it happens a lot, especially if you work in nonprofit, work in the arts, it's going to take a long time to pay that off. I mean, a long time. Even if you paid your entire salary, didn't eat, didn't pay your bills or anything for an entire year, you're only, a chunk into that. So my point here is that I'm questioning of whether or not a traditional education system is realistic. Now, having said all that, how does this come around to why I quit my teaching job? I quit it because as an adjunct professor, colleges tend to be very political. I'm trying to be as blunt as possible, but I'm sure somebody will see this that I know who teaches, and I'll get into trouble, but screw it. There's politics that get in the way. The education that people are getting sometimes is not kept up to date. You have a system in colleges, particularly in the US, called tenure. Tenure is a title that can be given to a full-time faculty instructor that originally was designed, if I'm getting this right, it was designed to give the professor a little bit of immunity in terms of like political science. So for instance, if you're teaching politics and you have an opinion on something, obviously that can be a very heated topic, and it would protect your job if you represent that you've had a certain amount of standing, a certain amount of years in service and no problems, and you were a good teacher, and they would deem you this. The problem with tenure is I've known tenured professors that are burnout and have no business teaching at all. They're wasting your money. I'm not trying to insult. There's some very good teachers out there too, but this is a big problem. The problem that I had at the college I was teaching is there was a little bit of a turnover with the person leading the department. I won't go into the specifics. And I just think it had lost a lot of its fire that it once had. I was also the chair, or happened to be the chair of the degree program. And so basically, being a chair of this program, once a year I was supposed to lead a group of consultants to review curriculum, analyze what we were teaching to students, how this was going to prepare them somehow in the real world for a career, and make adjustments accordingly. And it got to where we weren't meeting. And, as a volunteer for that part of it, I still had to take blame for it because, I'm having to rally teachers to try to get this thing together because it's legally required as part of the degree. And it just had lost a lot of that fire, a lot of that passion. Didn't seem like anybody was interested. And I just could not, with any type of integrity at all, continue to teach in that avenue or that environment. The other thing that kind of made me want to rethink things is online classes have become very prevalent. My experience as an online teacher, it got to where the school was offering a lot of online programs to stay competitive and to keep students. They weren't out there offering students anything of value that was much different than another college, which is what you have to do. It's competitive, it's a business, and most people in institutions do not run things like a business because you get funding from the state, the government, and all kinds of other things, so they don't have that kind of fire under their butt that a store or a startup or a retail or something like that would have. I mean, you have to sell product or you don't stay in business, and schools tend to run a little bit differently than that. They still get into trouble when things get tight, but anyway, and again, I know that a lot of the subject matter I'm talking about here is starting to get a little bit political in nature, but anyway, it's fair to state that because I'm giving you the reasons why. Anyway, as being regulated into an online class and teaching that way, you had typically, my ratio, I would have a couple students who were really, really good. I wish they were not taking an art class online, that they were taking it where they could speak with a teacher and get feedback from their peers. That just seemed bizarre to me that they would even offer something and give the same amount of credit when you're clearly missing a big chunk of what is important about getting that degree out of it. So that was another problem. And then I would have students that would try to race through a certificate or a degree really quickly, and so they thought, well, I'll take all these online classes, I'll sign up for like 18 hours because I can study on my own time and I can watch the material at 3 in the morning or read up, and and that doesn't work either. It's just like a class, and you have to be pretty self-motivated to work in that environment. Anyway, needless to say, I hadn't had a physical class in a couple of years, and it was something that was really bothering me. I like being able to interface with students. I like to be able to propose questions. I like to be able to answer questions. I like to be able to lecture. I like to be able to have a discussion. And the integrity of that was taken away, and I actually was supposed to be teaching an actual physical class in the fall. I was pretty excited about it. I was revamping my curriculum, and they decided that they were going to give it to what they call a visiting scholar, which means they're schmoozing up to another college that's in a better position. And it kind of blew my mind that a visiting scholar, being somebody who would be much less experienced than myself, would come in and take precedence over an adjunct faculty that had taught the class for 10 years. So anyway, all this to say, I got to thinking about it, and I thought, I have a full-time job. I'm very dedicated to being a photographer, and I take a lot of personal work, and I do prints, and I do all that in my spare time. I have a volume of work. I'm teaching this class. Oh yeah, and I'm making a ton of videos that I'm very serious about too. And that kind of, takes care of the teaching bug somewhat. And it intrigues me doing this show or this podcast or this series of videos, whatever you want to call it, because it's stuff that's available. There's no charge for any of this. You're able to watch it for free, and it's shared knowledge. And thinking about how that can come back in different ways, and how the quality of that, because we have a technical means of doing it now with the internet, is so much different than it was, let's say, in the 80s before we had internet, and the only way to get a lot of this information was to spend hours in a library and try and soak it in that way, assuming that you learned well reading. There's different learning styles. And video just wasn't existent. You had to go take a class, you had to go to a school, something like that. And the reality of it is you can find that information on your own. So I'm very interested in the quality that I do here, and I'm not perfect at it. These aren't the greatest videos in the world. I try. I want to make them better. I get good feedback from you guys, which is very encouraging. And anyway, so needless to say, my schedule is just jam-packed, and there's a little bit of time for sleeping in there, eating, a hair of social life. Maybe I can watch a movie now and then, and that's it. And I finally decided, I put out that tweet, and it was funny, the myriad of answers that I got on that, because I didn't explain very much what the integrity part was, nor the small chunk of change, because that was my excuse for doing it, even though I wasn't really happy with it, is, okay, well, I need some extra money. And it really wasn't a very significant amount. Like I said, no one goes into teaching for the money, which is I think it's embarrassing and ridiculous that tuition has gone up to a national average in the United States of almost $30,000 a year for a student, and teachers make about that a year. I mean, it's pathetic, you know. How would you possibly encourage the quality to come up with a brilliant mind that's come out of school who might make a good teacher, and you can't compete and offer them something that they might get out in the workplace or in the real world? That's the quality of your education. And I'm not saying that they're bad teachers. They're great teachers, and they do it because they love it. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they have to teach. They do it because they're passionate about what they do, and they care about their students, and they care about the quality and the improvement of their student work. And I fall into that. I just got to a point where I could not do it as an adjunct faculty anymore. And I could use that time on this podcast. I can use it taking pictures, making art. I can use it doing a lot of things. And the other problem that I had, and I came to a realization on, and I think everybody needs to realize this too, is that life is full of changes. You don't typically, especially these days in the fast pace that we're all on, you typically don't do one thing for very long. We all have changes. Like I said, the average person changes careers 5 times. You're going to be doing different things. I've done this for 10. And while it wasn't my primary source of income, that had changed over the years. It was something that weighed on my mind and on my conscience and on my energy levels. And, you know, I had some incidents with students that didn't care and weren't putting anything into it. And I actually had a situation at one point where I didn't feel like I was really being backed very well by the school. And like I said, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to get into any of the politics on it. I'm just giving you some straight up reasons. And, you know, I can take this down, I guess, if there's any backlash that I get. But I just realized that in order for me to improve, I had to change my situation. Think about that for yourself. Is there some area in your life that you want to improve? I think that integrity should win out all the time. I mean, I know you have to eat. We all have to. But you need to feel good about what you're doing. You need to feel proud of the work that you're contributing to the world, and you need to feel good about all that stuff. I'm not saying, you know, drop your day job and become a pro photographer. I'm just saying whatever it is that you do needs to make you happy, and you need to derive a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride. There's a number of things that you need to be able to get out of those things. And it's really important. And so I chose the integrity route. I wrote my resignation letter, turned it in today. And it's like a weight is lifted. It actually feels pretty good. It's a little bittersweet though, because, you know, there's some good years that I've had there. There's some students that I still keep up with via Facebook and Twitter, and I've had a few watch the show via email. You know, and those people, you know, you can still keep up with them. It's interesting to see what they're doing now. And I'll look back at that with very fond memories. But what's not cool is to sit there because of fond memories and think, okay, I've got to keep doing this because it'll get fond again if I just stay at it. And things don't. You need to learn how to clear out the old to make room for the new. And that's just some general advice. I guess this is kind of an unphotography show, but let's bring it back around to photography a little bit. And let me leave you with this. I mentioned when we started recording here why I enjoy teaching so much. And when I share stuff with you, even though it's a video and I'm not really meeting you face to face necessarily, we might have some email exchanges. It's not unlike teaching online in some ways, but I enjoy that, and it makes me a better artist and a better photographer. When I have to explain something to somebody, what's wild though to me is it's anything from something small, like, you know, what is aperture, or what is depth of field, or, you know, how does shutter speed impact, you know, basic questions, to composition, to historical questions about photographers, and then to like things like, you know, I got an email today from somebody who was feeling really burnt out and looking for some advice to lift them up. And I don't know if I did that well, but I tried. And so all this to say is that all those things, and you don't always know the answers. I don't think any teacher out there is going to know all the answers. What's important though is that you have a passion and a drive, and you care about somebody who's asking enough, and you care about that simple fact that they are willing to ask and they're seeking the knowledge to go find out yourself. And guess what? You get better as a photographer too. You end up thinking of things differently. You end up forcing yourself to fill in holes and shape opinions that maybe you didn't have before. That is the beautiful thing about teaching. You know, one of the dumb things when I did teach for 10 years, right? And every 3 years, or I can't remember what the frequency was. It was every 3 or 4 years, because I did it several times. I think I did it at least 2 different times. You have to basically reapply for the position. And I don't know if this is for every school, but this is certainly the way it worked with the school I taught at. I was asked to reapply. I had to write a letter to the dean, who I knew personally, and basically I had to say there was a word count, it was like 500 words, why I like to teach and what made me a good candidate to stay on board. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, maybe some teachers need that, but I'm very passionate about it, and it almost was kind of a drag because I'd write out all this stuff that I'm saying now. I was very honest about it, but it's like, wow, you didn't remember enough that last time, or you don't come see my classes ever to do an evaluation, or you know, it's like, I care. I need other people to care too. And that's why I would rather teach in an environment where people care. And so I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know if I'll teach formally in a school again. It's very hard to get a teaching gig. And so I don't have the energy nor necessarily the desire to do that. I definitely will keep doing this. I derive an immense amount of satisfaction in the conversations I've had, and the fact that people are really interested in these videos. I'm not the be-all, end-all. I don't have all the answers. I'm not even that great of a photographer. I'm trying. I've got some experience, and I'm hoping that maybe I just have something that can help somebody else somewhere along the line. And that's kind of my thoughts on teaching. And I know this is a weird kind of back and forth rambling rant here, and I'm into the 21-minute range already. If you guys watch these entire videos, I'm blown away. It's a talking head. And if you look on the line or if you look online about, you know, how to get views on YouTube, everybody says, well, keep it short, and that's the last thing I do. But I try to offer something that's of value. And I know this was a little bit of a rant, and maybe this was a self-centered value today that I had to get off my chest and kind of talk about. And I will write an extended blog post. But think of ways where maybe you can contribute to teaching too. You don't have to be a formal teacher in a university, but I mean, think of the human race. We've survived for, you know, millions of years because we have a very democratic way of helping each other in our next generation learn from what came before. We don't come on and have to figure out from scratch every time. We have parents, we have teachers, we have mentors, we have people in our lives that help us with that. And think about, with photography, if that's your interest, how you can help somebody else's life with that talent that you've got. Anyway, all this to say, ramble, going to town. I am a free man from the teaching in a formal higher education setting. I have no regrets. I enjoyed it. I loved it while I did it, and I am really excited about doing something cool and new with my time. And that probably most likely will involve what I put into the effort I put into these videos, I hope. So we'll see. I've got to get some planning, get some thoughts, decompress a little bit. I will not be returning to school this fall. It won't be nearly as stressful, and it's exciting. So anyway, I hope I've been expiring. I am expiring as we speak. But anyway, I hope that maybe I've made somebody out there think a little bit differently, or look at something differently, or, you know, change has got to be made. And, you know, how do you do it? How do you pick your battles? What was worth fighting and what is not? And this was one that I decided wasn't worth fighting anymore. And so I made my decision, and I'm sticking with it. And now I'm just rambling. So anyway, thanks again for watching, guys. I'm not going to pimp any stuff, but you know where the website is, artofphotography.tv. You can go check it out if you want. We got a mailing list and some stuff there. We got a meetup coming up, and, you know, there's things. You'll figure it out. Anyway, go take some pictures. Make them good. And once again, this has been another episode of the Art of Photography Vlog Edition, and thank you for watching.